X-Men Origins Wolverine is a prequel to the X-Men series, telling the story of how the X-Men came together, told from the point of view of Hugh Jackman's James Wolverine Howlett, also portrayed briefly by Troye Sivan. Upon release, X-Men Origins Wolverine was met with generally negative reviews, scoring 38 out of 100 on Rotten Tomatoes, 40 out of 100 on Metacritic, and 2 out of 5 on Letterboxd. In 2006, Wizard magazine rated James as the best comic book character of all time. In 2013, Popular Mechanics rated X-Men Origins Wolverine, James' first standalone film, as the worst comic book film adaptation of all time. That's a big difference. X-Men Origins Wolverine might just have the widest popularity ratio in terms of character to film. How did this happen? In the 2013 interview with IGN, director Gavin Hood revealed that production was a troubled process, with new scene drafts being delivered to the production officers overnight, and the direction of the story had already been a problem. In their X-Men Origins Wolverine preview issue, Entertainment Weekly revealed that Gavin Hood and 20th Century Fox hadn't been able to agree on tone. Hood, who had served in the military, saw Wolverine as the superhero version of an army vet with post-traumatic stress disorder, someone deeply ambivalent about his ability to kick ass. That dark take on the character sparked some intense debate within the studio about whether teenage moviegoers would want to be burdened with such heavy themes. Gavin Hood was quoted as saying, "It's been a process coming to understand the differing positions on the people who have a major stake in the film. Disagreements between director and studio, hastily rewritten scripts during production. To say this is a Fox comic book film, it all sounds very familiar, but that's not all, because another comic book film director who was involved at a creative level was also brought on board." While the parties were discussing, a raft of internet stories popped up and fanned the controversy by alleging that Fox's Rothman ordered a set to be repainted in a less gloomy palette without Hood's approval, and that Hood had been replaced by Lauren Chula Donner's husband, director Richard Donner. Make no mistake, the production had been an uneven process, and word began to get around that X-Men Origins Wolverine didn't match the quality that Fox had originally hoped to create. The rumours turned out to be true, and when X-Men Origins Wolverine was finally released, the reviews were not pretty. Even Hugh Jackman himself wasn't satisfied with the end result. In a 2013 interview with Entertainment Weekly to promote a second Wolverine standalone film, The Wolverine, Hugh Jackman said, "I had something to prove and we could have done better. Somehow, the first Wolverine movie ended up looking like the fourth X-Men, just with different characters. I left unsure if we'd achieved our goal, which was to make sure people understood my character." But it says a lot about a film with Wolverine in the title that the most discussed character was Ryan Reynolds' Wade Wilson. Wade's character was considered to be such an inaccurate version of the comic book incarnation that Wade's spin-off, Deadpool, completely ignored the events of X-Men Origins Wolverine and rebooted the character in the most literal screen adaptation of a comic book ever. In the comics, Wade is a character who volunteers for the Weapon X program after being diagnosed with a terminal illness, and the experiment transforms him into Deadpool. Wade's healing factor keeps him alive while his tumours continue to grow, and through all of this, Wade constantly addresses the audience and says every thought that comes to him. This is the version of Wade as presented in Deadpool. In X-Men Origins Wolverine, Wade is given psychoportation, heat vision, retractable arm swords that shouldn't fit when they retract, the iconic costume is absent, and Wade's mouth is sewn shut. There has never been a less accurate live-action incarnation of a comic book character, and the worst thing about this version of Wade is that Ryan Reynolds, who reprised Wade when Deadpool did the character justice, was perfectly cast, and Deadpool proves that. Ryan Reynolds was born to be Wade in the same way that Christopher Reeve was born to be Clark Kent, or even the way that Hugh Jackman was born to be James. Make no mistake, almost every X-Men Origins Wolverine review will spend most of its duration criticising Wade, and rightly so. There's no other film about one character that's so completely overshadowed by how it mishandles another character. So there's that. But ultimately, X-Men Origins Wolverine is simply the first of a trilogy that continues with the Wolverine and ends with the Untitled Wolverine 3, which will be Hugh Jackman's last time portraying the character, after which Hugh Jackman will have been in the role for 17 years and 9 films, a record for any actor as a comic book character. All other matters aside, X-Men Origins Wolverine's worst offence is the uneven tone. Is it an X-Men prequel? Is it a James Howlett prequel? Is it an X-Men origin? Or a Wolverine origin? What exactly is X-Men Origins Wolverine? Well, very much like Green Lantern, which also features Ryan Reynolds, X-Men Origins Wolverine assumed there'd be another instalment in the series from the X-Men Origins title. So what was the next X-Men Origins film going to be? X-Men Origins Magneto. History shows that X-Men Origins Magneto never happened, but X-Men First Class did. Another X-Men prequel taking place after the events of X-Men Origins Wolverine. Hugh Jackman even cameos. X-Men First Class introduced James McAvoy as a younger version of Patrick Stewart's Charles Xavier, who featured in the X-Men trilogy. Patrick Stewart also cameos toward the end of X-Men Origins Wolverine as another younger version of Charles, who is not wheelchair bound. But Patrick Stewart's role is only a vocal one. Charles' young appearance was computer generated, which was too convincing to be a bad special effect, but not convincing enough to not be creepy. Right apart from why Patrick Stewart's Charles is walking when James McAvoy's Charles wasn't, which is just one of those inconsistencies caused by lack of hindsight, Charles' very presence raises the question of why is Charles only intervening now? The answer, of course, is because X-Men Origins Wolverine isn't about Charles, but X-Men Origins Wolverine is about how the mutants featured in X-Men came to be under Charles' supervision. Really, the big problem with X-Men Origins Wolverine is that X-Men is an ensemble piece, and isolating one of those characters on their own adventure while still providing backstory to that ensemble means that the story has no idea what it wants to be, and that means it's just a mess.